TV. Meyuder Ingomwa. West Nile TV. Meyuder Ingomwa. West Nile TV. Meyuder Ingomwa.
And welcome to the Viewpoint on West Nile Television, lighting up the region. Today on the show, we review very many issues happening through the week in the region and around the country. My name is Patricia and welcome to the Viewpoint. And today in studio with me is senior journalist, my colleague and senior reporter at West Nile Television, Mr. Jonathan Mahajub Muzamil. You're welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Patricia. It's a pleasure being here.
It's a pleasure hosting you, and we shall be discussing a number of issues happening through the week. The presidential address on COVID-19, UIA's activities coming to West Nile, and a lot more. You're welcome.
Thank you. It's a very big pleasure, not just being here at West Nile TV, but actually having West Nile TV here in West Nile. The proprietor who thought about this venture has actually done something that is going to be a very huge game changer for this region, socioeconomically and even politically.
Just before we go to the presidential address that happened on Wednesday, at the beginning of the week, the government announced a waive on visa fees to South Sudanese entering Uganda. The Minister for East African Affairs, who happens to be the first Deputy Prime Minister, announced that Honorable Ali Twala Kadaka announced that South Sudanese entering Uganda will have their visa fees waived. They're implementing a pronouncement by the heads of states in 2016 that visa fees between countries within the East African community should not be levied to their citizens. But she said that effective 1st October is when these visa fees are going to be waived. But if South Sudan does not reciprocate that, then these fees will be reinstated. It is so interesting for somebody like you who loves going to Sudan.
Yeah, well, you see, first of all, there's been a very huge issue with integrating Sudan as part of the East African community. It's actually one of the youngest nations on earth. And you understand that its governance structures are still very, very weak. They are not very robust to be able to actually stream with the different East African community states. So I think this is a very good move, considering the fact that also Uganda is, the government of Uganda is actually investing in South Sudan, in different other spectrum of investment, including energy sectors, and so on and so forth, telecommunications, and all these. So I think it's a way to go. It's a plus for the integration of South Sudan in the East African community, and also looking at the economic viability of allowing free cross-border movement, which is going to be a plus for Uganda in terms of revenue and balance of trade.
As to whether South Sudan will reciprocate that back is what we are going to closely follow.
Sure.
You know, I imagine a situation where South Sudan does not reciprocate, then we have to reinstate back the visa charges.
Sure.
It cannot be a good thing for a dear neighbor like South Sudan. Coming to the presidential address this week, the Fountain of Honor, the President of the Republic of Uganda addressed the nation on issues to do with COVID-19. And one of the biggest highlights was transmission rates are dropping at a decreasing rate. They are dropping, and focus is going to be on the national task force efforts in focusing on vaccination. And by the end of December, they expect more than 6 million people to be vaccinated. As a country, we are expecting vaccines. We already have AstraZeneca, but we are expecting Pfizer, we are expecting Moderna, we are expecting Psychopharm, then we are expecting also a consignment from Johnson & Johnson together with COVAX International. Yeah, so far we have around 1.7 million Ugandans who are fully vaccinated. But now the biggest target here is 4.8 million Ugandans are the priority population to get vaccinated. According to how you viewed the speech, what were your highs and lows of the whole speech?
First of all, Patricia, I think it would be nice for us to observe a moment of silence for the over 31,000 people that have succumbed to COVID-19 in this country. And also our prayers does go to the people that, the 122,000 that have been infected. I want to think that this presidential speech that took place yesterday has been revolutionary scale. Because I think the way the president has handled this COVID-19 pandemic is at a revolutionary scale.
Yes,
we also want to thank the Ministry of Health, together with the national and international partner agencies that have chipped in,
WHO,
the World Health Organization, and all these agencies that have really contributed in being able to contain the spread of the Delta variant, which was more infectious than the first COVID-19. I think that's really nice. The government has plans to vaccine 4.8 million by the end of this year. And if the government actually succeeds in that, I think we are seeing the capacity of the government to be able to lift off nearly all the restrictions. But why I say this is important is because of the fact that some of the most key restrictions have been lifted off. Especially, for me, what really, struck chords is the element of removing the restrictions on education. By November 1st, universities and post-secondary institutions will be opening, which is a plus. And in January, we're expecting primary schools to actually open. Why? First of all, when it comes to the primary, well, this is now a song that everyone is singing, teenage pregnancies. By January 1st, these girls have to go back to school to mitigate additional teenage pregnancies, especially here in West Nile, which has recorded the highest rate of teenage pregnancies, over 4,000 young girls
per district.
This is astronomical figures, unseen before in the history of this nation. So that for me is the plus. Second, opening up churches and mosques. You see, our national anthem is for God and my country. In this fight, when we put God aside, and then we're fighting a losing war, because the moral fabric of this nation is actually hinged on the morality based on religious principles. Of course, leave alone the fact that Uganda was almost included in the Arab League of Nations, but of course let's look at Uganda being a Christian state. I think it's a plus to retain the moral sanity of this nation. Because with the unemployment cases, when the moral fabric of this nation is not held intact, we're looking at things like anarchy. We're looking at civic unrest. We're looking at all the vagaries that come as a result of suppression of the moral equilibrium of this country. So for me, I think these two elements are very, very key. And also look at another additional element. You see these religious servants, the imams, the pastors, these ecclesiastical ordinances, religious ordinances that are here, that the people that are working. These people haven't really been prioritized when it comes to access of COVID relief. Recently, the COVID relief funds, they were not there. Pastors here in Arua some of them were recorded to have registered as cobblers so that they can access this relief fund. So I think opening up of these institutions
will improve livelihood.
It will improve the livelihoods of these people.
Still talking vaccination, still talking vaccination. The priority population is 4.8 million by December. The elderly 50 plus, we have the teachers, we have the health workers. Those of course are the frontline people. But we are talking vaccination, and we have vaccines not yet utilized. How is the government going to go about that? How do you think the government can go about that? Then we also have this ultimatum given to the resident district commissioners, the chief administrative officers, together with the DHOs, that if you can't have people in your district vaccinated, you're going to be fired. How workable is that?
See, that's why I told you the president is handling this thing at a revolutionary scale. Well, I really don't think that these people are going to necessarily have to lose their jobs. But let us look at the imperative.
But dismissing is losing my job.
Look at it this way. Of course, there are steps that must be ensured to make it a point where someone is going to lose their jobs. Okay. But I think the biggest issue that we are facing right now, the Ministry of Health and the government of Uganda, in vaccination, one, I think, is a matter of psychosocial disincentive on a national scale. Why am I saying that there is a psychosocial disincentive? You see, the reality is not that these district officials, health officials are not immunizing. People are not turning up for immunization.
Why?
Thank you, because of a psychosocial incentive. You see, majority of the rural population in Uganda are not vaccinated.
Yeah.
It is the people in urban populations that are actually vaccinated. Yeah. Because there is a trend to that. Why am I saying psychosocial disincentive? People have a very negative attitude towards this COVID-19 vaccines, not necessarily because in the back of their head they believe these things do kill. People know COVID-19 is real, it kills, it has probably killed someone's neighbor out there, someone's mother, daughter, sister, friend. We have lost over 33,000 Ugandans have succumbed to this disease. So Ugandans know it is real. Why are they not going to for these vaccinations? Me, I believe that one, look at when they were distributing COVID-19 reliefs, when they were distributing food. It is the people in urban areas that actually benefited from this. The majority of this less incentivized society of northern Uganda, southwestern Uganda, did not benefit from this.
They were not considered.
They were not considered. But people in Kampala, people who are actually much better off than the people who are here in our country, did not benefit. So necessarily people's psychosocial attitude towards COVID-19 vaccines is not necessarily that they don't believe that this COVID-19 vaccine kills, but they just have this negative attitude towards the vaccine because of, first of all, look at corruption. Look at the resources that have been allocated for COVID-19. I want to give an example. Look at Uganda Development Bank funds that is meant to benefit manufacturing and agro industries. 444 billion that was earmarked for actually loans for providing agro incentives.
Yes, agro incentives.
And all that. 164 billion out of that money was benefited from by people in central Uganda. More than half of that money allocation. What about the people here? So I think the social disincentive towards the entire COVID-19 has literally scarred people's minds towards accessing this. So I don't know what the government is going to do, the Ministry of Health is actually going to do to reverse this incentive. And
another challenge also, I think, is these vaccines. Already, one lady was telling me, now we knew AstraZeneca. Now they are bringing Moderna, they are bringing Pfizer. Which is which? Are they the same? You know, that is also going to be a very big challenge towards achieving the numbers of Ugandans to be vaccinated.
Mm.
Still talking COVID-19, we know very many businesses, since the economy kind of went slum, we know very many businesses are counting losses as a result of being locked down. You know, very many businesses have been affected. We have seen schools turn into restaurants. We have seen school owners, because of loans, lose their businesses. And we have this, what is it called, private sector?
Yes.
Chamber of Commerce. As a region, do you think they can really be of help to help revamp these businesses?
I've read a report by Economic Policy Research Center on the impact of COVID-19 on businesses. Basically, micro and small businesses. Macro, micro, small businesses. I think these have been the most affected, especially when you look at the impact of COVID-19 on these businesses. And especially those businesses that are relegated to the service sector. Sports, entertainment, even real estate has been affected.
Yeah. Tourism.
And tourism, thank you, and tourism as well. First of all, in the entire Uganda, it is Karamoja and West Nile, you know, these usual suspects, and parts of southwestern Uganda have been the most affected. One, let us look at the issue of downsizing. If you look at the statistics, the agro sector has actually been affected a lot as a result of downsizing. Despite all the efforts to be able to subsidize, to provide economic stimulus packages for the agro and the manufacturing industry, partly in West Nile here we are seeing the agro industry has suffered. Especially the primary agro industry.
Yes, because there are no customers to consume.
Exactly.
A hotel which would consume 500 kilograms of tomatoes in a week can no longer consume. And
yeah, that's very certain. First of all, you look at the rise in input costs, both in agriculture and in manufacturing. You look at the input; it has gone up. Actually, the cost of doing business has gone up by at least 10%. And so that the implication is that you're going to see an increase in prices of finished products, and people are not able to afford that because of the capacity to spend. The nominal expenditures have all dropped. So I think that is how our businesses have been affected here. And of course, the small, micro and small businesses have suffered the most, especially here in West Nile. First of all, they are not able to comply with the COVID-19 standard operating procedures. A small business here in a corner, a shop, may probably not be able to afford even to put hand sanitizers and washing equipment at their shop. Even affording masks is a problem. So you find these people are subject to law. And when they are arrested, look at these small businesses, even these motorcycle riders. Sometimes they are unable to even afford the minimum. And their motorcycles have been impounded. They are suffering. People at home are not eating. People are, how they are feeding sometimes can even be a very huge question that you might ask yourself. But this is part of it. When it comes to downsizing, according to statistics, at least 47% of permanent, semi-permanent workers have been laid off in the spectrum of industries. And 7% of permanent staff have been laid off. So if you ask me the impact of COVID-19, definitely there's positive and negative impact. But right now we're looking at the negative impact.
And how they can be revamped.
How they can be revamped. So let us also go on the positive side. One, it has opened up the digital spectrum for businesses. In other words, there has been a restructuring of, first of all, the workforce. People are now working at home. People have gone virtual. You see that? It is revolutionizing the business in the country. At the same time, it is also leading to restructuring of the workforce, which I think is a plus. It has also opened doors for, or windows for manufacturing. Today, the country is actually employing more people in the manufacturing. People are manufacturing masks. people manufacturing these sanitizer equipment, people manufacturing actually vaccines. The other day we saw how much money government allocated for
COVID.
That is also trying to balance the element of unemployment which has increased as a result of the COVID-19, which I think is a plus for us.
But socially also, you who is a big spender, it has taught you. That has been the conversation on COVID-19 and the presidential address. We will go for a short break and we'll be right back.
West Nile TV, lighting up the region.
Short break, and we are still discussing very many issues in West Nile and around the country, and we are talking about WENRECO, we are talking about West Nile Rural Electrification Company and connecting West Nile to the national grid. It is prudent for you to know that the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, through its statutory instrument 2001 number 75, had to operationalize government's rural electrification function through public and private partnership. So that is how WENRECO, current day WENRECO, came in. WENRECO is now 18 years in West Nile since 2003, trying to power up the region. But of late we have had the government chief with Member of Parliament Arua Central, Honorable Atima, be at the forefront to see that by 2022 September, the government keeps its promise of connecting West Nile to the national grid. Now, the electricity officials say Karuma is 98% to completion, but we don't know whether West Nile will be a beneficiary of that by 2022. There have been very many challenges, like high power tariffs and unreliable power, to the extent of calling it a disco light. But now, WENRECO being here 18 years, it's now coming to 19 years, 2003 up to 2021, that is 18 years. Do you think they have done a good job in powering up West Nile?
Thank you very much, Patricia. You see, I want to first of all thank legislators and leaders of West Nile. I think this is a very, very monumental stage in the history of powering West Nile. These people have come together. They have shown an element of solidarity, working together, making sure that during their tenure, West Nile is connected to the national grid. And it's not that West Nile is not connected to the national grid. We know that Moi and Adjumani are already connected to the national grid through Gulu.
Yeah.
So I think full connection, we can use that terminology. Okay. But yes, thanks to these members of parliament. Okay. But let us hold that thought there. Let's backtrack a little bit. You see, the history of West Nile has been one of a trial and error. Okay. It has been characterized by gross marginalization, succession of government after government, even being moved from one colonial overlord to another and then to another. It's been a very painful journey of West Nile, 100 years of being part of Uganda. Yeah. But I think the economic circumstances of West Nile started to change after the end of the civil wars.
1970.
Yeah, and especially after the NRM government took power. I think from then on we began to see the 10-point program of the NRM government being implemented in parts of West Nile, and we began seeing an invigorated element of pride. And of course, even we started seeing an invigorated element of civic infrastructure growing in West Nile.
Yeah.
But I think one of the landmark things was being able to bring power to West Nile. It might not have been enough power, but there was something that the government actually did.
Talking about enough power, I remember one of the leaders some years ago said West Nile does not need much power, but now it is catching up with us.
Yeah, that is a Chief Whip, Honorable Thomas Tayebwa. He went on the floor of Parliament and said something that really irked people of West Nile, especially the leaders. They stood up, they opposed it, they called for an ad hoc meeting with the State Minister for Energy, who came here, and I think it was very, very fruitful.
Yeah.
But let's come back to the issue of Wenreko.
Yeah.
You see, Wenreko is, like you said, it has been here for some time. And also the circumstances under which Wenreko came to win this contract, to get the license to provide power, was
to
something...
generate and distribute.
Yes, to generate and distribute.
That is how Nyagak comes in.
Yes. It has been something that has been very contentious. It has been something that's very, very political. We don't want to base so much because even it is a multi-jurisdictional issue now. Because one, look at Aga Khan is being owned by, Wenreko is being funded by Aga Khan Foundation for Economic Development, which is an international body. We're looking at World Bank, we're looking at the German government, KDF, its wing that is managing the financing of this Wenreko. And also, we're looking at the Industrial Promotion Services, which actually owns Wenreko.
And at one point it brought issues when they wanted to renew the contract of Wenreko. The people were against it, but it was renewed anyway.
Yeah.
You can continue.
Yeah, that 20-year license was definitely renewed. And I don't think Wenreko is going to go anywhere. Even if they are connected to the national grid. I am moved to believe that Wenreko is not going to go anywhere. It is going to still help in distribution of electricity. But here is the issue. Our problem in West Nile is going to supersede the element of inadequate supply of power. I actually think at some point, Honorable Thomas Tayebwa is right to say that Uganda has enough power. We actually do. You see, in the 1950s, we were supplying Uganda was generating about 50 megawatts of power. But today, as of October 2020, we're looking at over 21,000 megawatts of power. Which is even more than per capita consumption. I think the issue and the challenges that we're experiencing now as far as power is concerned is going to be the issue where there are going to be gaps in power distribution, what we call energy infrastructure. Let me give an example. You see where Electromax is located, that is now part of Arua district.
Yeah.
That is in the water here. 8 megawatts capacity installed in that place. Yet the people, the community around there don't have access to power. You see the conundrum? Our issue, I don't think, is necessarily now energy. It is the gaps in energy distribution. Access to this infrastructure. Poles are very, very expensive. 1.2 million, 2.5 million extending this one. People don't have this money. Even if you're going to bring power to their footsteps. That is not where the problem is this power going to reach them? Which I think is the biggest issue that the government of Uganda and the energy ministry is dealing with. Even right now, the over 150 million US dollars connection of Arua only, pulling this power. We're already experiencing problems, and that's what's delaying access to electricity to the national grid.
But there was an activity by government through REA, is it REA? ERA, to put poles in different communities. Aren't those communities included?
They're included, but at subsidized rate, not necessarily the price that is going to be given, but still, it's very, very hard to afford. So I think the issue we're looking at here is infrastructure. Vision 2040 projects that by that period of time, which is not very far, 50% of Uganda's energy is actually supposed to be nuclear generated.
Okay.
And we're looking at a generation of approximately over 41,000 megawatts, which is going to move this country to a middle income economy. So I think Uganda has enough power. We have surplus power. Our issue is the gaps in connectivity and power distribution. But I think from the meetings, from the inspections I have attended by the various ministries, most especially the Ministry of Energy. Very recently, I think 2 days ago, we had Honorable Ruth Nabanja, the Minister of Energy. Ruth Nankabirwa, yeah. who was here. She was able to inspect Karuma, Luoya. Is it, that name has a problem. Oluyo.
Yes, substation. Then there is Tata substation.
Yes. And then we have this Muni substation, which is going to generate 160 megawatts of power. All these substations, which are even going to be stepped down using 30 kilovolts. You see that?
Yeah.
Because that power is too much, we're unable to actually consume it. So when it comes to the issue of power, we have power. Our issue is distribution of this power to the rightful people, especially the rural people who have about 18%, who are actually 18% of the rural communities are connected. But in urban areas, at least over 60% of the people are accessing electricity. So I think that is the conundrum.
Now, do these rural people, can they afford power with these high power tariffs? Can they afford this power? Or do they have economic activity to make them afford this power?
Now, when it comes to affordability of electricity, in especially our western rural communities, I think that is the geopolitical matter. Like I said, it is a multi-jurisdictional issue. First of all, you look at Electromax alone. 3.6 billion allocated for the movement of some of these thermal power plants from Tororo to here. But how much is it generating? How much is it really giving out? You see that? We all know about some of these leaked offshore accounts, offshore business ties with these electricity generation companies that have been given these licenses to produce this power. We all know of what is happening. Even if you look at reports by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalism, they have put out reports. Some of them are really very, very sad to look at.
Okay.
They're very, very sad to look at. But these are issues we don't want to look into. But the fact is, people here have contributed so much in terms of revenue to the government, in terms of profit to these electricity companies. But like I said, the fact that they have been able to give all that money, I think they deserve to be connected. They have actually shown their capacity to be able to consume this power.
Yeah, on 25th October 2020, the President of Uganda launched 133 kV connection of West Nile to the national grid for modern infrastructure, industry, and jobs. And this brings me to this question. How far are we to attaining being connected to the national grid as a region? And are we prepared for that in terms of industry, in terms of infrastructure?
Yeah, first of all, remember, this 132 kV power that is coming to this region is not only for us. It is more than what we can be able to consume at this particular moment. At this particular time, we are actually under capacity to consume all this power. But the government has plans to move this power to South Sudan, to Central African Republic, and also to the DR Congo. Because you see, the government spends, the government is getting loan from World Bank, the government is getting loan from the different revenue bases, national and international, so it can be able to bring this power here. Where do you think the government got all that money? Of course, these have been subsidies from these donor organizations and states. China is giving money for this power. But what is the government getting out of it? Bringing 132 kV here in West Nile, the government is not going to get back this money. And if it's not going to get back that revenue,
it has to export.
It has to export this power. Who is going to buy us more confidence? Who's going to pay teachers? Schools are starting.
Yeah.
Who's going to do all this? But I am more confident that with the structures that have been set on ground, with the political pressure that is mounting on the government, 2026 is not very far. So I think at this point we are talking.
And there is progress?
There is progress. The only impediment to connection of this power is us. We are the very people who are frustrating this.
I hope you will have cottage industries to consume the power, apart from the industrial parks.
Industrial parks are coming. And not just industrial parks. We have science and technological parks and innovation parks.
Okay.
We call them PIPs. So they are coming.
But you as a private investor, you also need your cottage industry that can consume power.
We haven't liberalized the economy.
Okay.
We haven't liberalized it. It's a free market economy. Just recently, we are having a new coffee factory coming in for Zombo.
Yeah.
Which is now opening eyes of more investors. Actually, more investors are now beginning to come in to invest here. So I think the West Nile region is ripe. Our agronomical sector is ripe to move in, especially when it comes to value addition.
Yeah.
We are very ripe. Cross-border trade. You cannot mention that. We have plans for the international airport which are underway. All these things are going to need to be powered. So I think West Nile is ripe for this power, and come September 2022, our eyes are first of all on God.
Okay.
Because without Him, this region would have ceased to exist. This is a region which is a region of vertical treasure. It is one of the best regions for industrialization in this nation. We have enough labor, manpower is ripe, cheap, affordable manpower.
Yeah.
So I think this time we're going to have a turnaround, and especially when you look at alignment of the National Development Plan 3, we are ripe. If you look at Vision 2040, we are aligned. We are basically aligned to the National Development Plan and all the plans that the government has to push this nation to a middle income economy. So I think this is going to be a plus for the ruling government if they actually actualize on this and they expedite the process for connecting West Nile to the national grid.
Land is one of the conditions to spur industrialization, and Madiokolo district has offered 515 acres of land for an industrial park. That is part of the assignment that Uganda Investment Authority has been given to establish 22 industrial parks around the country. Already we have 3. So if you add the 3 to the 22 yet to be established, we shall have 25. Yes. We have Namave Industrial Park, we have Boyogere Industrial and Business Park, and then we also have this other park in Luzira. Yeah, those are industrial parks owned by government. Now Uganda Investment Authority has been tasked to form those parks. Now Madiokolo comes in to give us land. You were there.
Yeah, we were there for the handover of that land, about 100 or so acres.
500.
500 acres for the establishment of the Madiokolo Industrial Park, which I think is a plus.
Well, is it Madiokolo Park or it will be a West Nile Park?
It is going to be a West Nile Industrial Park in Madiokolo.
Thank you.
Because I think we're going to benefit from about 3 industrial parks.
Yeah.
And I want to thank the willingness of the people of West Nile, whose eyes have been open to government programs. And of course, not just that. You look at Ajumani, the chief of the Palaro clan, that is, it's called Becker? Yes, Zachary Becker. He has been able to offer 1,000 acres of land. 500 for the setup of the industrial park, and 500 for setting up of farms around the industrial park to provide the input necessary to boost the industries that are going to be set in place. Leave alone that, of course, even the people...
And the land is titled. That's titled news.
Yes. And the people of Koboko are also showing their willingness. They're also giving out land. So we're expecting industrial parks to be set here in this region. But I think let us look at precedents. The viability of these industrial parks. Has it worked elsewhere before in Kampala? Yes.
It has worked.
It has worked.
Yeah.
There is precedence that it has worked. And we believe it is going to work for us. I already stipulated budgetary allocations You see, if there were funding gaps, that would be a problem. But we have not seen any funding gaps in the precedent or the vanguard industrial parks that have been set up. And also, we are looking at Uganda. Uganda has been listed as one of the biggest investment destinations in the world, as we speak. Very many foreign investors are eyeing this place. So I think we have capacity.
The one of Okoro Coffee in Zombo is a foreigner?
Is a foreigner, it's an Ethiopian company under the superintendency of the DI. You know, so I think the capacity is there to have these industrial parks. Yes.
I think the Minister of State for Finance for Investment is doing a great job in attracting these investors to come.
Sure.
And we pray that the Madi Okolo industrial park materializes.
Yeah, indeed, when we have people like Honorable Joan Anigo, very, very instrumental people in being able to direct resources, being able to change policy, especially considering the fact that they have the floor of parliament to be able to do this, together with other...
Evelyn
Anite.
They get with.
Yes, and just yesterday I was actually also speaking, I was at a workshop for the draft budget, consultative workshop for the financial year 2022-2023. I think some of the issues that were raised during that budget by district local government leaders are also directly attached to this element, because the issue of alignment of district plans, local government plans, with the National Development Plan 3 is going to be streamlined, especially when you look at the budgetary issues, funding issues. You see that. And I think in the next financial budget, some of these things are going to be addressed, which is going to help to be able to equip our local district local governments to be able to accommodate these new developments which are going to come starting next year. Yes.
Thank you so much, my colleague Mwahajub Jonathan, a senior journalist and reporter from West Nile Television. This is The Viewpoint on West Nile Television, lighting up the region. We will go for a short break and we'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
West Nile TV, lighting up the region.
Short break, and we talk Uganda Development Bank with its mandate to give long-term capital support to support import substitution, agro-industrialization, tourism, health and education. And in our context here, how much do you think businesses, how much do you think SMEs, how much do you think the cottage industries have gone to access this fund from UDB?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very hard to quantify, but one thing I do know for sure, Uganda Development Bank has been set up to accelerate socio-economic development.
Yes.
And if you look at its allocations, financial allocations, 34% of that money goes to what we call primary agriculture. 34%. That's the biggest percentage. and which is supposed to benefit our region here. We talked about the 1 trillion stimulus package given to Uganda Development Bank. We looked at another, I think, 200 plus billion given again, additional stimulus given in August last year, plus other funds it is receiving from donor organizations and all that. A lot of money. However, if you look at indicative figures, we are actually being able to see that our people here, especially in the West Nile region, who are engaged in small businesses, macro, and we do still have big industries here. So as a result, access to these funds from Uganda Development Bank is a challenge.
Do they even know the requirements?
Yeah, speaking of requirements, if you look at the policy for accessing these funds, much of it has been digitalized. Submission of application forms, which has been worsened by COVID-19, has been very, very digitalized. Look at the digital penetration in this region, in our region. It's very, very minimal. And then, look at sensitization. People are not sensitized about these funds. You were saying something?
Talking about digitalization, some years ago we had NITA being launched here in Koboko district, and we thought we would have access to these digital services. But how far?
I think it would be better for us to even just now move away from the issue of NITA.
Okay.
Because we have seen there has been some of the challenges that has affected the digital entry challenges that we have. So I think it would be better for us to move out of that. Okay. We can, I think, it's going to be a story for another day. But I think it is good, it will be very beneficial if they're able to sensitize people about access to some of these funds. A lot of government, even people today, don't understand what Emyoga is about.
Yeah.
People don't know Emyoga. What is Emyoga? Emyoga, what does it? People do not understand because of poor sensitization and implementation. Government of Uganda has amazing programs, which if they were executed and implemented to every single letter, I think the condition of our people wouldn't have been like this.
Does UDB give out loans with is it sureties? Does UDB give out loans?
Well, yes, they have to do business assessment before they can be able to give you that loan. But yes, they do give loans. I think they have earmarked 400 billion plus, 444 billion for loans, which a lot of companies, businesses in central Uganda have been accessing. Eastern Uganda have been accessing. But here, I think the rate of access to these funds is very, very minimal. It's very minimal. And I think that is not helping the local economy. Yes.
And their interest rates, are they business friendly?
Yes, definitely. You find being, I think...
Those long-term...
Yes.
Very business friendly.
It has to be business friendly because one, you remember, it is a semi-autonomous, but it is closely attached to policy-making institutions of the state. And so the element of business friendliness of these loans is there, definitely, yes.
So, do you have any statistic of how many SMEs around the region here have managed probably to access that?
You see, one thing, as a result of this COVID-19, access to such statistics, actually existence of such statistics have been very, very minimal because of minimal movement and contact with these businesses, and also digitalization of these processes. I think it has hindered the inequality, which affects the efficacy of these government projects and these government financial allocations to help people.
Okay.
Yes.
So that was a discussion on whether SMEs in this region and other manufacturers access the Uganda Development Bank loans. And that brings us to World Rhino Day. World over, every year in September, the world celebrates World Rhino Day. We have a historic site in our region called Rhino Camp.
Yes.
And probably it was a place where rhinos used to station. And this day is all about, it provides an opportunity for related organizations, zoos, NGOs, and members of the public to celebrate rhinos. rhinos in their unique ways. So far we have 5 different species of rhinos, but there is, I think, one species which is now endangered. What do you have to, what's your view on the Rhino Day celebrated every year world over in September?
Well, I'm very saddened. I'm filled with melancholy. I'm not happy, just as any West Niler should be. I mentioned earlier on that West Nile is a world of vertical treasures.
Yeah.
Since the Precambrian era, I use this word and my friend Mr. Andy Opingopi, he burst into laughter, but yeah, these are paleontological terms that definitely, if you're talking about flora and fauna,
okay,
they move consistently. But we have lost one of our biggest treasures in West Nile. You mentioned about a particular species of rhinos which are native to West Nile.
Yeah.
In Africa, the northern white rhinos are native to West Nile region, northwest Uganda. We're looking at DR Congo, we're looking at South Sudan, and we're looking at parts of Central African Republic. Actually, the imaginative Lado state. You got to look at it.
Before you continue on the issue of the Lado state, tell us some history about Rhino Camp and its name.
Yes. That name basically originates because rhinos were numbering in their thousands.
How many years back?
That was about 20 years back. 20, 25, 30 years back.
Around 1980?
The 80s, yes.
There were very many rhinos
there. Were
there?
very, very many rhinos. The people who, in their senile ages, do very well remember white rhino. Most of Uganda's previous presidents, that was their hangout.
Okay.
But all these names originate because of the existence of rhinos that time here in West Nile. It was a pride of the people of West Nile, and it is what brought former US President Franklin Roosevelt here, all the way from United States for presidential safaris. This was his hunting ground. But like I said, 22nd September was World Rhino Day, a very, very sad day for West Nile, because right now, our native rhinos, there are southern white rhinos, and there are northern white rhinos. But northern white rhinos were only native to our region here. Southern white rhinos were in other parts of the country, in other national game reserves and the conservancies. But our northern white rhinos are only 2 left. They were poached to near extinction. 1980 civil wars, errant poachers, they finished them.
Didn't the Uganda Wildlife Authority have authority over them?
During the wars, who was there? Actually, this Uganda Wildlife Authority is a very, very young body. It's not that old. And during the wars, there was nothing that could have been done.
Now, wasn't there human settlement in Rhino Camp those years?
Yes, and they were responsible also for reduction in rhino population. We cannot point fingers at the US government and say, hey, look here. President Roosevelt came here and handed. Actually, by the way, I tried to contact the new US Deputy Chief of US missions in Uganda. Unfortunately, it panned out. No one responded. Yeah. But we have seen in media how the US government has come out and refuted the involvement of the US government and said if there's anything, let the people of West Nile take it up with the family of Franklin Roosevelt. But they are not going to involve themselves in any compensatory issues
for
rhinos. Because also, like I said, it is a geopolitical issue. Rhinos are not only hunted by US government. The Belgian government, I believe, also has documented elements of evidence of hunting rhinos. Look at the British. These are all colonial overlords in West Nile. You understand? So when you come to accountability, I think it is geopolitical. Instead of focusing on US, I think let us look at it on a very bigger scale.
Yeah.
But that is not it. The issue here is our rhinos native to West Nile. There were 3 left. They were hunted to near extinction. Actually, the northern white rhinos have been functionally declared to be extinct. Why?
What about the ones in Kenya?
Those are the ones in Ol Pejeta Conservancy at the foot of Mount Kenya. That's why they are being catered for by scientists from Germany, from Britain, from Italy, everywhere. What they are doing is, you know, there was the only male northern white rhino left, called Sudan. But unfortunately, he died in 2018. Now there are 2 females left, that is Fatu and Najin. Now, Najin is the mother of Fatu. But Najin, actually, her embryos, her uterus is cancerous. She cannot be able to reproduce.
Okay.
And then Najin's hind legs are too weak. I mean, Fatu's hind legs are too weak. I think it could be vis-a-vis. Fatu's hind legs are too weak to be able to sustain a pregnancy. And you know, a rhino's pregnancy is 18 months.
18 months, yeah. 18
to even sometimes 19 months. 17, 18, 19 months. So, scientists have kept these 2 remaining northern white rhinos at Ol Pejeta. There is good news. There is a glimmer of hope. There is a glimmer of hope. Despite failed attempts to fertilize the embryos, artificial insemination, AI, it has failed on countless times. But what seems to now be working is what we call in vitro fertilization and surrogacy program. Now, when you talk about in vitro, they have been able to secure at least 5 embryos from these female rhinos.
Yeah.
And what they are going to do is they are going to implant these embryos through in vitro fertilization in a surrogate southern white rhino female. It will not change the DNA of this rhino, but just a surrogacy program. A surrogacy program is where, let me use human example. Say a woman is unable to give birth. So they remove her embryo and her husband, and they connect these 2 in the womb of another woman who can be able to reproduce. But the child this woman is reproducing, I mean, is giving birth to, is not hers, but for these 2 couples who are not able to have a child. So scientists are experimenting, and I think very soon we are going to have a very good report. But even if that report happens, remember, a population of 3, how long will it take, even if they are they're reproducing through in vitro fertilization? How long will it be since we are introduced to our native white rhinos and they are given back to the national environments? It's going to take decades.
Yeah.
Probably even half a decade.
Yeah.
You see that?
To realize the 1,000 plus which were there.
But we have seen this happen. The southern white rhinos were almost hunted to near extinction as well. But their population rebounded through conservancy programs. There are over 20,000 white rhinos, I mean southern white rhinos globally. And also there are plans by Uganda Wildlife Authority. I was talking to Mr. Bashir Hanji, that is the spokesperson for Uganda Wildlife Authority. And we had a very candid conversation over the return of these southern white rhinos, and he was very, very precise that yes, we might not have the northern white rhinos here, okay, but we will have white rhinos nonetheless because of the breeding program in Ziwa Conservancy. I think the Uganda Wildlife Authority is in plans to introduce these southern white rhinos to their natural habitat. It's not a very cheap exercise, but among these conservancies in Uganda, Ajai Game Reserve in Mariokolo has been also part of those conservancies in Uganda earmarked to benefit from this breeding program in Ziwa Conservancy. It is a lot of money. If you see, there are some reports that the money could have actually amounted to about $10 million US, a whopping $10 million US to put a fence. But I think the key issues here is also the reduction in the size of our Ajai Game Reserve here. Poaching, I mean, people are entering into this conservancy land.
Yeah.
There are some particular people in high echelons of power whom we also know are cutting down some of these trees
And encroaching.
and encroaching on these trees. And some of these people, you know, they're immune. They have impunity.
They are above the law.
Yeah. So we are asking that if such can be addressed, I think we are going to have our Ajay in one piece, fenced off, our rhinos introduced, and our tourism is going to be boosted. But I think I'm going to make an appeal to the, I think, United States government and all the colonial overlords of West Nile. That is the Belgian government, that is going to be the British government, to come together. We do not know where that 10 million is going to come from. But out of the goodwill to the people of West Nile, to affirm their goodwill towards the people of West Nile, to heal some of these old wounds, I don't think 10 million can be, they can break a sweat raising that 10 million, or part of it.
For those economic superpowers.
Yes, or part of it, to be able to speed up. They have closed Ziwa Ranch, Conservancy Ranch,
in Nakasongola,
where there are some unforeseen factors. Some of them could be financial. But what are they doing? What they can really actually be able to do something to be able to help us regain our lost pride, especially our rhinos, which have been now considered factionally extinct.
Thank you so much, my colleague Mahajub Muzamin Jonathan, for that. And this has been the review of the weekly happenings in this region and in the country. It has been the Viewpoint on West Nile Television, lighting up the region. Catch me next Friday, 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Same time, same station on West Nile Television, lighting up the region.
West Nile TV, lighting up the region.